Everybody, welcome to the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. In a little bit, we will be talking to podcaster extraordinaire Kara Swisher. But first, let's get to our two big things. Number one, can you guess? Can you guys guess what number one is?
Do you have an idea, John? I don't know.
Does it rhyme with rump?
You guys are so smart. Yes. Believe it or not, Donald Trump. What a shitty week he's having, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do a little rundown, shall we? New York Attorney General Tish James on Tuesday asked a judge to impose $20,000 in sanctions on Trump, his two adult sons, their lawyers, and other co-defendants for their actions in a civil fraud lawsuit, which is scheduled to go to trial next month. She cited, quote, frivolous conduct, and claims they are repeatedly making legal arguments that courts have already rejected. So that's up in New York. Down in Georgia, in the Stone election case, we got to see the first televised hearing. That was fascinating. You guys check any of that out?
Nope.
Judge is pretty awesome down there. I forget his name, but he's not playing around.
Good.
Yeah. Fannie Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, about a month ago got a letter from Jim Jordan. He wants to, continue the investigation, demanded evidence and materials and all kinds of information from her in Trump's case. And she responded in a scathing 9-page letter. She blasted him. Of his requests, she said, the obvious purpose is to obstruct a Georgia criminal proceeding and to advance outrageous partisan misrepresentations. And she said his public statements and his recent letter, quote, make clear that you lack any legitimate legislative purpose for that inquiry. Your job description as a legislator does not include criminal law enforcement, nor does it include supervising a specific criminal trial because you believe that doing so will promote your partisan political objectives. Your letter makes clear that you lack a basic understanding of the law, its practice, and the ethical obligations of attorneys generally and prosecutors specifically. She is not fucking around.
That was a great letter. I enjoyed that very much. Jim Jordan is special in that he is willing to do anything that Trump would be happy about.
This is the part that I love. She invited him to purchase a book about racketeering statutes. And she said that as a non-member of the bar, you can purchase a copy for $249. I mean, she's also funny.
She is funny, and she's doing her best to straddle the fence, to be professional, at the same time stand her ground and not cater to this ridiculously partisan nonsense. Again, it's classic projection with these people. It's as they are completely, utterly weaponizing the government, they accuse Biden and the Democrats of that. It's just such a shield that works beautifully for their base.
Definitely.
But that's all it does, is just work for the base. Because, Jen, it's what?
It's just dust in the wind.
No.
Oh.
Wrong song. Wrong song.
It's all about the bass.
It's all about the bass.
Oh, I was stuck on dust in the wind from an earlier comment.
So a judge in New York ruled that Trump is liable in the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit. A judge also rejected Trump's bid to delay his New York State fraud trial. His former Mar-a-Lago IT expert, Yusel Tavares, flipped and will testify against him in the stolen documents case.
Well, that's what happens when you get your own lawyer and it's not paid for by Trump, which is what he did.
And you realize, do I really want to go to prison for that fat fuck?
Well, Trump's lawyer thought you should.
Yeah, well, they're all going to flip. Trump said he is going to testify in all his criminal trials.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
He also said he may seek to go to federal court. No one's ever heard of a filing with a judge that says, I'm contemplating doing something without just saying what you're going to do.
An almost filing. I may file. I may not. Let's see. Mike Pence, he called Trump's populism a road to ruin. I'm telling you, he's coming. He's coming. Shh, what's that sound? That's the sound of Pence winning the nomination.
I just don't know which primary is he running in. Is it the Republican primary? Because He's polling at 2%. Nobody wants him.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Is it feasible that he could win Iowa?
He could win, New Hampshire.
Okay. Historically speaking, you could be nowhere, but if you win Iowa and New Hampshire, that just sets you off on a different trajectory. Is that possible?
It doesn't matter whether
happened?
he wins some early states. Iowa's irrelevant.
Look at Biden and South Carolina. One state. Nothing looked bleaker than it did for Joe Biden in 2020.
The difference is that...
And then we had South Carolina.
The difference I see is that Joe Biden wasn't hated by the majority of the Democratic base. He may not have been tremendously popular with all of it, but Pence, they wanted to hang him.
I'm just talking pure fact. The fact was Joe Biden was counted out. He was hanging on by a thread. And then Claiborne endorsed him, came out, big push. He won South Carolina. Boom. The rest is history. So before South Carolina, there was a bunch of libtards sitting around going, oh, my God, Biden's dead. That's all I'm saying.
He wasn't hated. The negatives are the problem for Pence.
Okay.
His negatives are extremely high within the Republican base.
All right. Only time will tell. We can conjecture all we want, but I think the last 8 years is a pretty good indicator that anything can and will happen. Okay, let's move on to Wisconsin, our big issue number 2. We have a state legislature which is planning to impeach Justice Janet Protasewicz, who won her election to the state Supreme Court back in April, and that tipped the majority of the court, I think 5-4, into Democratic control, and it was actually a landslide victory. And now, because that liberal-leaning state Supreme Court, there's the threat that they will overturn all the redistricting bullshit that the state legislators did, and also, when it comes to abortion, make that legal again. So they're going to potentially try to impeach her. This is a woman who became a justice 5 weeks ago, and she hasn't ruled in one case yet.
And their cause for impeachment is absolutely absurd because they're claiming that she received funds from Democratic donors, Democratic Party, and that she could never rule on redistricting cases fairly. Meanwhile, the GOP has given tons of money to sitting Supreme Court justices in Wisconsin, and they're just fine to rule on cases.
Yeah, it's an excuse. It's not a justification. Look, there's a reason why they fucking lost in Wisconsin. They just don't seem to understand anywhere in this country that the more they do shit like this, the more they lose. Voters don't like this shit, but they don't seem to learn.
In the meantime, I just want to call out one of the examples of the Supreme Court justices in Wisconsin. He said that Christianity is the correct religion. Insofar that others contradict it, they are wrong. But that's okay. He once compared homosexuality to bestiality, called Planned Parenthood a wicked organization. But all of this is okay. And if they do impeach her, it's going to affect hundreds, if not thousands, of people with abortion.
It just gets to the point that Ruth Ben-Ghiat has said over and over again, the Republican Party across this country don't believe in democracy. There's nothing to do with democratic values, and that if people elect someone in a landslide, that person isn't what they want or who they want, they're just going to throw it out.
Yeah.
You make a good point.
All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Mexico. Mexico Supreme Court decriminalizes abortion nationwide this week. My loser, equality. In the wake of the Supreme Court affirmative action ruling, a judge struck down a provision of a federal program meant to help minority-owned businesses, a ruling that could imperil other programs that benefit underrepresented groups.
My winner this week is local news and democracy because of that. And that's because a new initiative led by the MacArthur Foundation and a number of other philanthropies, including Carnegie Mellon, Ford Foundation, and others, is going to put $500 million into local news in what they're calling Press Forward. And this is the biggest amount pledged to help local news ever. My loser is former Trump advisor Peter Navarro, who's convicted of contempt of Congress and is learning what Rick Wilson titled his book, that everything Trump touches dies.
My winner this week, Fani Willis, because she is the queen of not fucking around. My loser, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who basically said migrants coming to New York is going to, quote, destroy New York. All right, let's get to our weekly rant. Last week, a new Wall Street Journal poll showed President Joe Biden and Donald Trump in a virtual dead heat. And my initial reaction was, that can't be. It's an outlier. Let's see what the next polls say. Well, a new CNN poll this week indicated the same. My reaction now, what in the fuckity fuck of fucks is wrong with America? Joe Biden is the most successful, productive, first-term president in modern history, maybe even all of history. And he's accomplished this feat facing the most toxic, tribal, obstinate, intransigent opposition party ever. His first 2-year accomplishments include the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIP Act, the PAC bill, the first gun reform bill in decades, the infrastructure bill, historically successful COVID vaccine rollout, record job growth, inflation down to 3% from 9%, gas prices back under $4 from over $5, prescription drug cost reduction. He strengthened NATO and built an unprecedented Western alliance against Putin while helping Ukraine wage its successful defense against Russia. And what about Trump? He's a pathologically lying, sexist, racist, anti-Semitic, xenophobic, homophobic, corrupt, treasonous sociopath, a democracy-raping dictator wannabe who orchestrated a deadly insurrection at our nation's capital, refused the peaceful transfer of power, is twice impeached, 4 times indicted on 91 felony counts, is facing 4 federal and state trials in the next 18 months, was found liable of sexual assault, and has promised voters nothing but grievance, revenge, and an end to democracy. And they're tied. They're fucking tied. Half the country has lost its fucking mind. This is a wake-up call, Democrats. If you believe there's no way Donald Trump can be president again, please drop your drawers, reach down, and pull your big, fat, delusional libtard head out of your ass. Okay, it's time for Kara Swisher. She is host of On with Kara Swisher and co-host of the Pivot podcast. She's also editor-at-large of New York Magazine and the former host of the Sway and Recode Decode podcasts and the co-founder of the technology website Recode. Kara has been reporting on the industry since the early 1990s. She was once called Silicon Valley's most feared but revered journalist, and she's established herself as the oracle of the tech world with unrivaled access to the industry's most significant leaders. Her new book, Burn Book, A Tech Love Story, is described as, quote, a witty, scathing, but fair accounting of the tech industry and its founders who wanted to change the world but broke it instead. It's scheduled for release March 5th, 2024. Kara, welcome back into the back room.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
First thing I want to ask you about is Scot-Free August, because it gave us the opportunity to hear from Louie, which was great. He's a smart kid.
He's amazing. He is. I got 4 smart kids. But yeah, he's amazing. He's the oldest, and he's at NYU. I'm actually in New York. It's Scott's apartment. It's one of his kids' rooms. Yeah, he was great. I was even surprised by how incredibly intelligent he is. I mean, obviously college is paying off for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to it and I was kind of proud of him, you know, because you always want to look at the kid. Yeah. Were you just like marveling like a typical parent? Like,
you know, we have a very close relationship. I'm close with all my kids, but he and I, you know, he's just so thoughtful and so reasonable. I think he sort of represents the hope I have for the future in a lot of ways, and that he's not like reactionary. He's just like, look, everybody. And he's very like calm about it. And I really appreciate that, but he's not naive to what's going on. Right. And so I've tried to raise my kids like that, like in terms of making sure they are, you know, I always let them listen to whatever they wanted, to do whatever not do whatever they want, but have them challenge themselves. And so I think he really took that to heart. And my other son is even more debatey, by the way. But I really like to have kids that question things and at the same time have respect for not just bomb throwing, but really thinking about solutions. And that's what Louis does. I really, I was really pleased.
He seems like he's very engaged in the world that he lives in. And I don't want to make a generalization, but I wish a lot more, you know, Gen Zs and young people were.
She's Gen Alpha, I guess. He would be, what would he be? I don't know. He's 21. I'm not sure what gen he is, but I think a lot more kids are than you think. I think what you do is you get sort of this idea of kids as being only on social media, and they just are in their phones, which a lot of adults are, by the way, FYI. If you sit on a subway, I was taking a subway here, and everyone's sort of entranced by their telephone. And, you know, a lot more, like I just saw the movie Bottoms, which is by a bunch of young people. It's so smart. It's so interesting. There's all kinds of really interesting, thoughtful young people. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we just assume they're anesthetized social media addicts. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're very engaged.
My daughter Kim cast that movie.
Yeah. Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Amazing movie.
Yeah. We saw in the last election, we saw young folks come out and vote in historic numbers, and we need that again in 24 for sure. And so when you look at climate change, you look at LGBTQ issues, you look at gun reform, you look at saving democracy, like if there's ever a time for young people to vote in droves, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah, he's going to vote. He voted. He votes, and it's really to assume. I just think the assumption, given how badly behaved older people are these days, I just am like, really, you're going to judge young people when you're arguing over whatever the hell you're arguing about? You know, I shouldn't be on Twitter ever anymore, but you know, they were arguing over whether it's okay to, you know, say anti-Semitic things. And it's like, well, I suppose you can, but it's not okay. You know what I mean?
If you're
like,
a Nazi, it's okay. You know, it just depends who you are.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what happened to you? Like adults are the ones that are really misbehaving, and older adults are really misbehaving. So I don't know. I think Louis was fantastic.
He was, and is he going to be back soon?
Yeah, I think he's in Argentina right now, studying fascism and food.
Your brother Dave, too.
Jeff.
Jeff, right.
Jeff.
He was pretty good, too.
Dave is my other brother. Yeah, he's a doctor. I wanted to bring him on to talk about sort of how doctors are dealing with AI. And, you know, he's very technically oriented, and it touches in his profession. He's an anesthesiologist quite a bit. And so I wanted to give just, for a doctor who's pretty up on things, what's going on with them. And I think there's a lot of recent news around medicine and AI. And
that was an insightful part of the conversation as well.
Yeah.
So is that just like a scot-free August thing? We have to wait till August again for these guys to come back? Or?
Probably. Yeah, probably. I tried to vary people. I had the Will Hurd, who's obviously not, he and I don't see eye on many things. But I like to deal with conservatives who are reasonable, you know what I mean, who want to have an actual conversation about policy. I had Savannah Guthrie, I had Don Lemon. I try to do different things, largely because it's such big shoes to fill for Scott. People still love Scott. They really do. Over all those people who are wonderful. But they really do miss Scott. And we just did the taping yesterday, which has appeared today, our newest one, it's a corker. Scott's back with all his penis jokes and stories.
Gotta love the penis jokes. And on a scale of 1 to 10,
He's not giving them up.
How much did you miss Scott in Scott-free August?
I did a lot. I do. I saw him a couple times during August. I went to visit him in Nantucket. But I do. I miss Scott. I think we have a real rapport. I think we challenge each other. And I think it's really important to disagree civilly on lots of stuff. And we did on this show, actually. But he's... I do miss him. He's become a friend, and I really, you can tell by this show how much rapport
the chemistry is there, and he brings the penis jokes. I mean, I think one of my favorite episodes.
I am in his house.
One of my favorite episodes is when you guys were talking about both Barbie and Taylor Swift, Oppenheimer, and the jokes that Scott cracked during that episode, which were funny but completely. Like
inappropriate. Inappropriate would be the word.
Taylor Swift has 500 songs about guys leaving her, but not one about blowjobs. I think it's time we stop ignoring the connection. I mean, that's Scott. You either love him or you hate him. To me, everything's funny. So that was hilarious.
I do. Me too. And I think I give him permission. Like people are so nervous about jokes, and I think, this San Francisco lesbian is going to laugh about it and not get overly. Bent around in axles. And I'm concerned with issues of homophobia and sexism and transphobia. But at some point, you have to not assume everybody's awful, which I think is what happens on social media, is that, you get into these camps. And so, I don't love all of them, but it was not a very good joke, that one. But some of them are. But I like to also point out that these are the people making the economy run. And that's my...
Well, I want to ask you about that. It's literally my next thing.
Yeah.
How about, quote, how can she be so popular when her knees don't even bend? That was another Scott classic. Again, I think this is all
Unfortunately,
funny.
Taylor
but
Swift
she'll probably never
is
come on
such
this.
a better business person than Scott will ever be. So whatever, he can say all he wants, but
So-
she's the engine of the economy. So
Well,
fine.
speaking of which,
whatever.
this was the summer of women, and the impact on the economy between Taylor Swift, Greta Gerwig, and Barbie, and Beyonce has apparently added about $8.5 billion to the economy
That's right.
in Q3.
Right.
That is unbelievable, and
Right.
probably is just causing massive amounts of diarrhea among the patriarchy.
Well, I don't know. I think it's always the summer of women, Andy. I just, women are the biggest
Not like
spenders,
this.
the biggest consumers.
This is
No,
incredible.
this is the creators. This is the creators but I'm saying women are the biggest consumers, spend most of them, the disposable income is done by women. But yeah, these are real entrepreneurs who've been given a chance to run their own businesses, and you can't leave out Dolly Parton. You can't leave
Right.
out, there's all kinds, and this is in the entertainment space. They always treat it like it's an exception, except it isn't. It isn't. Once you make these products, people are there to take them. This is not a fluke by any stretch. It's the same thing when Black Panther came out and everyone was like, oh, look, Black movies can make money. I was like,
That's right.
It's a movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Well,
not, it's a universal
they say that about
movie.
musicals and westerns too. It's like give audiences musicals and westerns, and they're a smash hit, but yet we hardly see any of them. So I think that point is well taken.
There is a gating function in Hollywood, and I think that's been broken now. Like that's why you're seeing quite a little bit of difference in what is popular and what is not popular. I was a big fan, as you know, of Yellowstone, which everyone made fun of me. I was like, fantastic, and so
Amazing
was 1883, and huge hits on streaming and everywhere else. And people are like, why do you like that? That's flyover. I was like, it's good. It's good. And it has a universality that, we try to assume. I like Succession too. It doesn't mean like you can't like one thing or the other. And so I think it was really important to point out that maybe the gatekeepers who are going away don't know everything, and that things tends to bubble up as with or without their help, things tend to bubble up.
Right. Well, I happen to think they don't really know much about anything, and I think
they do. That's not true.
Everything is
they're
siloed.
okay.
The movie business today is so siloed, and it's
It
very
can be,
hard
yeah.
to get them off
be.
of that track of the
Well, they don't know what to do.
superheroes and
Well, that's not working, is it? What
No.
worked this summer was originals. All the originals are the ones that did well, whether it was like Megan, whatever it was. It's not the ones, and even that Operation Freedom, which I'm not a fan of, but I can see why it did well. There was a real need for that among the audience that it was targeting, and so they of course did their narrative. Oh, they're against the odds, and I'm like, no, you just made a movie that people liked. Just
Right.
calm the fuck down. Right? Okay.
So
you
true.
made it and you made a fortune. Hush up.
Well,
Like,
the key will be, will
know.
they do something like that again soon? Or is this going to be yet
probably.
another?
There was a Jesus movie that did well a couple of years ago. I can't remember. Same actor.
Who doesn't love Jesus?
Jim. I know. I was like, that's what they were like. Can you believe it just moved well? I'm like, yeah, I can. I feel like I can believe it. So I don't know. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie.
My friend
It's
Jeremy
really-
Sisto, he played Jesus once in a movie. I
Oh,
think
did he?
I think it was called Jesus. Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh, was he? Yeah. Yeah.
I want to ask you real quick,
Great
because you
act.
kind of
I love
surprised
him.
me
He's a good
about Burning Man. I would have thought you were the kind of person that would be like, there's no fucking way I'm going anywhere near Burning Man. And I was reading some of your stuff this week that your comments were pretty much like pro Burning Man, in a way.
No, I'm not pro Burning Man. I would never fucking go to Burning Man. Let me just say, as a person,
All right,
unless they build
that's
a
what
Four
I was kind of
Seasons.
hoping to get to, because I would never fucking go to Burning Man. But
I don't like dust, and I don't like mud more. So
and
it was
6
like
miles
a
of
perfect
it,
thing.
by the way.
6 miles of it.
Maybe like a
So
10 feet of mud is fine, but like 6 miles, no.
Yes. Here's what I did. I don't care about Burning Man. But let them have fun if they want to do it. Like, as long as they clean it up, and if they want to dance around in outfits and put iridescent stuff on their skin and wear ridiculous costumes, I don't feel like judging people. Like, I live in I have a house in San Francisco.
Right.
I lived there for 25 years. I don't care what people want to do. And so I think they've schadenfreude over people's unfortunate situation. I mean, it sucks, no matter where you are, that sucks.
Well, it's like Fire
And so
Festival-ish, the fallout
Well,
from it.
yeah. I don't blame the people that went there. I think the guy should have gone to jail, which he did. But in terms of Burning Man, I was like, there was just so much like, oh, good. So they got it. I was like, why did they deserve that? Like, I don't even understand why it would be like, I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Let them be ridiculous. I don't have to take it. I would never go. Let me just say, I would never go. I get why people go, and they seem I've been at lots of parties in San Francisco where they talk about Burning Man, and I'm like, la, 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 la. I don't want to, I don't want to hear about your burning. Like, just enjoy it. And, I'm not going to tell you about me going to the hardware store. I like going to the hardware store. I don't go on and on about it. That's irritating about Burning Man people, but they like it. Some of the art is beautiful. If people want to, if they have a great time and they find community, I don't see there's an issue with that. It's just, I'm not going to do it because I don't like dust, but that's just me. So that's my feeling. And I didn't like, I thought it was kind of icky. Everybody's sort of making fun of them because it's not just tech bros there. There's actually a very wide ranging audience.
Yeah, I have friends who go.
festival.
Most of them are like middle-aged white guys who are trying to find themselves.
Yeah,
That's
okay. They should. It's better than what? A Klan rally, I guess. I don't know.
Nothing's better than a Klan rally.
Better than a Trump rally.
Coming from this Jew, I could tell you nothing's better than a Klan rally. But,
I know. I was like, I don't care.
How about you and Scott?
You can marry a goat.
How?
I don't care if you marry a goat. Go ahead.
Some people
I
not only
wouldn't.
aspire to that, but probably do in certain parts of our country.
Yes,
but
I
how
was
about
recently invited to a goat wedding. But go ahead.
really?
No.
An actual? Oh, I live in New
Jeez.
York, but I can be gullible at times.
Okay.
How about you and Scott in a Winnebago next year at Burning Man? Like a whole.
You know
like,
what?
Not a bad idea,
Here's
is
the
it?
thing. I don't know if he would go. That's interesting. He likes comforts. He's a comfort person. I think I don't do drugs at all. I don't know why. I have no particular reason. I don't have an issue with it. I just don't. And I just feel like if I go there, someone's going to slip me something and I'm going to end up in like another country.
Crazy
like,
Kara. We're going to see Crazy Kara come out.
Crazy Kara. And I don't want to be crazy in front of the people. There are a lot of tech people there. So that's one of the reasons I don't go. I don't want to be like dancing naked on mushrooms in front of tech people. It's not really my jam.
By the way, that's the reason my white middle-aged friends go to do all those things.
Oh, really? Is that
They
dancing naked? Yeah. Okay.
on mushrooms.
Good for them.
Yeah.
But I don't see us doing that. We may do a trip around the country. We may take Pivot on the road. That's what we're talking about today. That's why I'm here in New York.
Awesome.
And do some live things and maybe film our little journey together, maybe drive around the country, which I think would be
There's the Winnebago.
illuminating to both of us. Yeah, I wouldn't mind a Winnebago, but a nice one,
Little stop at Burning Man.
Little stop. No, never happening.
Good for
I'm
ratings.
telling you,
It'd be good for ratings.
if there's not room service, I'm not there in any of the. I don't do vacations. I was a camp
Room
counselor.
service. They don't
that was
have
enough.
ground. What it's.
I understand.
You're asking
they
for
have
a
good
lot.
food though. No, some of them have good. Bob Pittman apparently has quite a spread there with the food and.
Don't a lot of people like
luxury.
rent houses like nearby and then just go for like? Isn't that
No,
how
it's
a lot
not
of
close to anything. That's
No?
Coachella. I think.
Oh,
I think you're
right.
confusing with Coachella.
Another thing I'll never fucking go to either.
Yeah. I'm not a big outdoor. Although I did go to the Taylor Swift concert and it was fantastic. The first concert I've been to in years.
I was going to ask you about that too. You're kind of a big Swiftie, no? Or
I am. I think I don't know where my admiration for her business acumen and her talent is, but she's just one of these Swiss Army knives of entertainers. Just constantly. Just even doing this movie, I was reading about how she put together the distribution of the concert movie. So innovative, so interesting, and she just does things differently. And she was on the ropes a couple of years ago, if you remember. She was sort of on a downward.
Well, she
and
started
just
so
has
young,
She did. So I always appreciate any career of anybody, not men or women, who really have the long view. Again, Dolly Parton, think about that. Think about her long trajectory of her career. And she was a joke at one point, and now she's an icon. So I'm really, I was really fascinated by that concert because it wasn't just that she worked her ass off. If you have to be like, this woman is so wealthy and she still gave it her all for her audience. I love that about her. It's something even though I have questions from Tom Cruise, I love that about him. He just gives it his all, right? He understood the assignment, is the expression I use. Like he understood the assignment. And so with her, it wasn't just like the parking was great. The food was great. Everyone had a great view. The video was great. The costumes were great. The opening acts were great. Everything was so thoughtful and beautifully done. It was utterly worth the price of admission. And that's not something that happens a lot every day. And then she brought it. And it was also very, it wasn't overproduced. It's very hard not to overproduce something like that.
She has such a unique connection to her audience and taste.
She does.
And she's a smart businesswoman and she has great instincts. But my daughter went. My daughter's 19 and she went. And I subsequently saw videos people were posting, and I told her I actually want to go, not because I'm a fan of the music per se, which I think the music is fine, but I'm fascinated by her control over 50, 60,000 people. Like, there's a guy, if you're a football fan, there's a guy at the New York Jets. His name is Fireman Ed.
No.
And maybe 3 or 4 points during the game, he raises his arms like this, and everyone in the stadium gets quiet. And then he goes, J-E-T. The entire crowd says J-E-T-S, Jets, Jets, Jets. And she has that same kind of, and so I said, I want to go because I want to experience
you should.
that.
I would advise it.
Seems
if you
like
have some extra money,
phenomenon.
go in Europe. What I thought she did really strongly was that she could go from an incredibly costume, just set heavy set to just standing there with a guitar and still hold people. And that was one thing she did I thought was super interesting was she was so generous to her dancers. Like, I knew every dancer. She gave them space and attention, and it made her look better. And I thought that I was sort of struck because most people of her level don't. It's all about them. And I think it's probably is all about her. But she manages to bring out the best. I don't imagine you're going to hear a story of Taylor Swift sexually abusing her dancers, just like the Lizzo story or whatever, just saying harassing. I just feel like she's just, I don't know. It just was, I was sort of struck by how she could go from a big dance number with an amazing costume to a very simple girl with a guitar or girl with a piano kind of thing.
No, she's
and still be as compelling. It was just a great show. It's just like anything else. When you see a show that's, when something, a restaurant's satisfying or you buy a product and you're like, I'm thinking of my AirPods, just a perfect I love it. My AirPod Max, I love it. It's exactly what I want. It's worth the money I paid for it. There was something else I was using my Chevy Bolt. I love my Chevy Bolt, but I work hard for my money and it's worth the money. Like, it was worth the money.
Right.
And thank you for doing that. It was respectful of that. And you didn't feel cheated. And I think that was, and then she's making a movie, so people who couldn't afford can go. It's like, and she's kept the price pretty low.
Have you seen her documentary, Miss Americana?
Yeah, I loved it. I went back and watched it afterwards.
Yeah,
that was when she was sort of at her low point. That was when she was in
but even just politically, the decisions she's made and when she's made them and why she's made them.
Yeah.
She's got a good head on her shoulders, and so she's in a stratosphere that she's in that rare Elvis, Michael Jackson.
Must be hard. But aware of it. I mean, even that song "Anti-Hero," I'm stumbling towards your favorite city to whatever. Everybody is a sexy ape, I'm a monster on the hill. Lumbering to your favorite city, pierced through the heart, but never. She's so aware of herself and her power, and is not. But she's not apologetic of it. But she knows what she represents at this point in her life, which I thought was. She's very reflective. Listen, a lot of very well-known people could be more self-aware of themselves than as much as she is.
That is true.
And Beyonce's great. Beyonce's great, by the way, too. And Greta Gerwig, same thing. Very self-aware, very smart, not easily categorized in a lot of ways. I thought there were very few mistakes in that movie. There was one that I didn't like in that movie. When America Ferrera made that speech about women, I didn't think it was necessary. I think the whole movie was about. And it was much more canny, and Scott and she didn't finish the movie. I thought it was very kind to men, actually, in a lot of ways. I mean, it really understood the difficulties of having to be, I think about this. I have 3 sons. I think about, at one point, one of my sons, he's like, we don't get, and it's such a cliche, but he said, we never get to cry. I said, go ahead and cry. And he did, right? You know what I mean? Like, he was upset about something.
Nobody's stopping you.
And no, but they are. Like, I don't know where it comes from. And, I raised 2 of them in San Francisco, which you'd imagine is a very liberal place. But I had one son who, he loved this hat he had. It was a pink spangly hat. He loved it as a kid. Something happened at 4 years old. I still don't know what it was, that he's like, I can't wear that hat. And I was like, why? You love that hat. And he was like, I can't. I'm a man. I'm a boy. I can't wear that hat. And I was like, why? And he wasn't saying, oh, it's gay, which I think was the implication. He wouldn't have said that. But it was really interesting. He had, I can't watch princess movies anymore. He liked them. but then he didn't. And it was really, and I thought, oh, that's so sad for him because that gave him a lot of joy, right? And I couldn't convince him off of it. I kept saying, oh, pink is the favorite color of India. You love India. I just didn't know what to do to change him. And it was, but he didn't want to, and I didn't force the issue. But I remember thinking, what a prison he has there with himself.
Well, that's true. There's societal pressures that men have to live with about emotional things and crying and colors and clothes and that is very real.
Scott talks about that. Yeah, Scott's new book is going to be about that. I think it's going to be interesting. Don't cry for mean men. I mean, I think men have it good in most cases, but in general, I think we have to be a little kinder to. Anyway.
Well, I had Christine Emba on recently, and she was fascinating.
Oh, amazing!
It was a great conversation about all of this.
My wife edited that piece. Edited that piece.
Wow.
She did. She's a Washington Post editor. She was the editor.
And fascinating
that
it
didn't
a long
exist. Time with Christine.
Yeah, it took so long for someone to write that kind of an obvious thing.
Yep.
Let's talk about your book. You have a book called Burn Book, A Tech Love Story, which comes out March 5th of next year. Before I ask you about the content, I want to ask you about the photo on the cover, which is so badass. I was trying to think, like, how do I describe this photo? So to me, it's like Terminator meets Top Gun meets Nancy Pelosi walking out of the White House that day after she just put Trump's
little
balls
Hillary Clinton.
Put Trump's balls in a vice. Yeah. So those three things put together. I want to know if there was a caption above your head in that photo. What would it be saying?
Go fuck yourself. No, I know I'm kidding. No, I put the tech love story there. That's a very important thing. Is I'm furious with what they've done to the place. I think that's what you would say. It's like, what have you done to something that had such promise? Like, and it's a lot about the falling in love with something and then having the scales fall off your eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not naive by any stretch of the imagination, but that something so wonderful and that I love so much could be so could have taken such a turn because of money and power and need for control. I think that's really what it's about. And my thing is, I'm going to show you how it happened. I was there, and I'm going to show you. And not everybody, by the way. I have a whole chapter called "People I Like." You know what I mean? Like tech people I like. I do. I have a chapter. There's a lot of people. But I think right now, going from leaders. And as flawed as he was, Steve Jobs was incredibly thoughtful. If you go back and listen to our interviews with him, you'd be like, what a thoughtful, smart person who had, he had his issues of yelling at people. But boy, compared to today's people, he's like a sweetheart, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's weird to think about that. He misparked his car in a handicap thing. Okay. I guess.
Well, he's normal. Kind of he's not a fascist. He's not a Nazi. He's not white. I mean,
or he's not embracing them. He would have abhorred everybody today. He would have hated them. I know it. He spent a lot of time trying to, he actually became friends with Rupert Murdoch, trying to convince him not to be so terrible. You know what I mean? Like he thought he could the perfectibility of Rupert Murdoch, which of course didn't work, but he died before he could finish the job, I guess. But I really wanted to show how much I love tech and the possibilities of it and how it went down. And I think that, and it's not all negative because I have a lot of stuff of like what really great stories about people and what they were like and what they turned into, what they became largely because of money and power. People that had all these good intentions and they went awry.
Give an example of like someone who is at the top of that heap.
Well, Musk.
Right.
Musk is at the very top of the heap, because I had great hopes for him. He was, after he made the money at PayPal, he was, he had a lot of beefs with the people involved with PayPal, by the way. That wasn't quite as like up and to the right as people think. And neither was his career. He had to take money from the government for Tesla to survive. He didn't create Tesla, by the way. He bought it. He became a shareholder in it. I wanted to show like that. He's a good example. I really had hoped because he was doing things that were substantive, and a lot of people were doing stupid things like, a dry cleaning service, and then acting like that was changing the world. And you'd be like, "Are you kidding me? It's a dry cleaning service." And he was doing space, which I thought was I know a lot of people don't think it's important, but it is. Like space exploration is just like exploration of the globe. It just is. It's just, there's just no way around it. He was doing cars and electric vehicles, which I thought were very important. Or changing the idea of vehicles in our world. And it may not be cars, it could be other things, but understanding fossil fuels were dangerous for our continued existence on this planet, which is linked with space, by the way, having to be a multi-planet species if we want to survive. And so, and he was doing even the weird stuff like Neuralink and the digging. It was interesting, right? And then he was one of the first people, I think, to talk, and there were a couple talk about AI and the dangers of AI. This was a decade ago. He started engaging, talking about this. And we did an interview where we talked about it extensively about 8-9 years ago. And so he was really thoughtful. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know. Money, rich, wealth, fandom, personal problems, I think, are probably sprinkled in there.
Drugs.
In drugs, for sure. And he sort of turned into Howard Hughes, right? Right? Who also was a super promising person, by the way. He had serious mental issues, obviously, I think, as it turned out, but untreated mental issues, actually. And you sort of are like, here's someone who really could have been kinder and more helping humanity. And, as a Ukrainian official said today over the story about Starlink, a noxious cocktail of ego and ignorance. It's just has so much of an effect, and not understanding the profound impacts he had on a country that's been, you can have your opinion about Ukraine, but it was a sovereign nation, democratic nation that was attacked. That's just there's no, as much as they like to argue the point, that's what happened there. And so him to having unlimited, and he's an example of having unlimited, unfettered power and unaccountable power over things he has no business being having control over. And just saying I made the thing is not enough. It's just not enough.
Right.
It's unconscionable, I have to say. And then the same thing with this blaming the ADL for his problems at Twitter. It's like, what is wrong with you?
Well, what is wrong?
Just say I suck.
Is there?
I don't know.
Are we at some kind of shark jumping moment? Like, has he gone too far this time?
See the fawns? See the fawns? No, because it's interesting because I was looking at all the replies and all his minions sort of attacking the ADL today, and I'm like, wow, it's just like Trump. I feel like it's Mike Lindell everywhere. Like Mike Lindell. Oh, there's Mike Lindell again. Or Peter Navarro going to jail. Peter, sorry, you have to listen to a subpoena. Their ridiculous self-righteousness about their causes really kind of, and of course that's what they accuse the left of, which is like, you people are literally the most self-righteous nincompoops I've ever seen, right? You know what I mean? Like everything you accuse everyone of, it's sort of look in the mirror kind of thing. I think he represents, what I think is the bigger problem, which is the unaccountable nature of so much of tech, the unaccountable, unelected. You can complain about your elected officials, but they're elected, and they may not be elected in the way you want. Maybe there's too much money in it, but that was the Supreme Court. Go call the Supreme Court if you're in Citizens United. That's the way it is. That's what was decided. I just feel like unaccountable, unelected people making decisions in ignorance and having no governors on them is really dangerous for our world, actually. So
to me, him and Trump and MAGA, they're interchangeable. I think they both get up in the morning and go, how could I be douchier than I was yesterday?
Well, it's a desperate need for attention. Obviously, something happened in their childhood where they weren't loved enough or something. And something obvious happened, both of them, as a parent of 4 kids, you know what can happen to kids, right? You think about parenting a lot and you're like, what in the world happened to you? Right? What occurred? Now, that said, lots of people have tough childhoods and don't end up behaving like this. It's a really weird cocktail of this kind of bad behavior that you don't know where it's from, but it's basically narcissism writ large with people that have unfettered power, and that's really dangerous. And we've seen it historically. Whether you're talking about any of the people who have have damaged this world all have that same personality trait. And what the worst of all is they think they're saving the world. At one point I was interviewing Musk, and it was so ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. 2 points, actually. One was he had been very upset about Tesla almost went out of business, and the government helped him, the U.S. government helped him, but lots of others. And he was like, I was sleeping on the floor of the factory, and I had to be there every night. And I was like, listen, drama queen, what are you talking about? Like, really?
Right.
Like,
I ran a
he's
business
like, because
too.
if Tesla,
I worked late.
he said this to me. He goes, this is not the exact term, but you can listen to the interview. If Tesla doesn't succeed, humanity is doomed. And I was like, wow, really? A car company? Oh, okay, got it.
Right.
I remember thinking, are you fucking kidding me? You really think that, and only I can do it. He said, only I can do it before. If I don't succeed, humanity is doomed. That was his essential message. And I was like, okay, Jesus. And then he did it again when he didn't like Trump, and he would complain about Trump to me quite a bit, thought he was, but he went to that meeting that they had with all the tech people. He joined some of their councils, and I think I called him. I said, how could you do this? You cannot. He hated Trump. Let me just, absolutely, more than I don't like Trump, but he really didn't like him. And he went on and on about how he could change his mind. He could do it. I can change him. And I think I called him Jesus. I'm like, okay, Jesus, good for you. Good luck with that. Because I think he's an unrepentant, racist, narcissist, malevolent force. So I don't think he's changeable. I never did. You could see it, and he thought he could. And it was so egomaniacal. I remember thinking, oh my God, really? Like, you really think you're the only one that can save the world? And that's where he's operating from. And he does it all the time now. He did it in this story that Walter wrote in the book. I was thinking, what am I to do with my great responsibility? Well, I'm going to stop nuclear war. I was like, oh, you probably
Or I'll start
didn't,
one.
and you probably, yeah, like I literally, it's like, you probably didn't, and you probably got a lot of kids killed. That's what you did. That's what you ended up doing, because those ships launched missiles and killed a lot of kids. Okay, good job, right? You didn't stop nuclear war. They weren't going to, because he's ignorant. Like, that was the part. He was ignorant about the situation. And that's depressing. And there's quite a few people in tech like that. And that's worrisome, I would say.
In our final minute here, tell me where Twitter and Musk is a year from now.
Oh, I think it'll probably bump along. It was a shitty business before, so it's not like a high bar. He's rich. He might, he'll get a whole new constituency to buy his cars and trucks and whatever. And, liberals will stop buying it. The conservatives will start buying it. He's got a lot of, I love the stuff he's doing at SpaceX. I love the stuff he's doing, not the stuff he did in Ukraine, but Starlink is pretty cool. The cars are cool. The space stuff's cool. Twitter, Elon's just an asshole. And so I don't know. He could keep it going. It's like owning a bad sports team, or no, actually, sports teams are good to own now, right? Isn't that like minting money?
That's where the value is.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. He could be fine. He could maybe take it public, and it could be a meme stock. That you could see that, and still be a shitty business. Like all his fans, I want to own a share of this X or whatever. I don't know. It could be just fine. It could be. Everyone's always like, "Oh, now he's done it." I'm like, really? He's really rich. It's like a rich kid that their parents can get them off. That happens all, and everyone's can't believe it. I'm like, they have money.
It's he and it is like a reality show, and we keep watching, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
That's right. Yeah, it's not unlike Trump, except much smarter and obviously much more accomplished. I mean, what has Trump done but failed at business after business? That's not the case with him.
Last quick question. What's
is
happening with Trump 6 months from now, a year from now?
Scott's saying he's going to take a plea deal. I think
agree with that.
he will. You do? Okay. Maybe. It's an interesting concept, that's for sure. And that he doesn't want to go to jail. And then if in that scenario, he'll appoint who is going to be his successor. Then he has that power. He certainly doesn't lose power, even if he goes to jail. He's sort of like Silvio Berlusconi, right? That guy came back, and again, he kept having those banga parties, whatever. Although everyone's like, I can't believe Italy did. I'm like, banga parties? Of course they voted for him. It's Italy. But and it sort of led to this terrible government there now. I think he'll be able to have huge sway over the party until he's dead. I think so. And I think his shitty children will not have that kind of, because there's Dumb and Dumber, it seems like.
And dumberer.
But he's not dumb. Dumberer. I don't think he's dumb. I don't think he's dumb. And he's got a real innate sense of PR and
evil genius
opportunity. I don't know if he's a genius, but
genius.
He's got a lizard. I think lizard brain is more of it. He understands the basest part of humanity, and he appeals to it. Nobody got poor underestimating the taste of the American people, right? And so I think he'll have power still. I know it's a terrible answer, but I don't know why he wouldn't.
No, it's
What's
probably
he
the
going to
truth.
do now?
Yeah.
He's got the only thing he can do is be a pedophile at this point. Like I don't know what it is, and even then he probably
as
spin
if
it
he
that way.
wasn't before. I'm sure that's in his past.
Unproven,
Allegedly, covering myself
allegedly.
there.
But I'm just trying to think, like, what could he do?
Right.
Like, you know what he could do? He could hurt Taylor Swift. That would piss off lots of people.
Well, hopefully,
I don't know.
Hopefully,
I
he
don't
stays
know.
away from Tay Tay. She's pristine.
We're coming for him if he does. He's in big trouble if he does that.
Well,
Big
Eric
trouble.
Swalwell, who's
Yeah.
been on this podcast, he's a big Swiftie.
Yeah.
So we'll have a friend.
Is he?
Yeah, we'll have a friend in government for that posse.
How could you not be?
Yeah.
He's fantastic. Anyway,
Thanks for coming on. This was great. Look forward to the next time.
thank you so much, Andy.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andy.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Lengyel. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.